equate them in some way and lower them both, or some mechanism like that, but educate the public prior to going out to a
But
vote.
technically, it doesn't require a ballot measure, right?
Yes, it
Yes,
does,
it
it's
does.
tax.
Yeah.
It does, it didn't
Yeah.
say that.
It was a fee.
Yeah, yeah.
It
It could be either a simple majority, if it's a
Right.
general tax, or if it's a special tax that we're gonna earmark for, capital improvement or police services or something, then it's a 2/3.
Mhm.
So,
Or do you want to talk about these, each one as we go through?
Sure,
Or
go
do you
ahead.
want to wait?
No, you can hit Robert anytime.
yes,
Well,
don't really.
So it's not a question, I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the proposal is that to really be able to replace the parcel tax, we need to look at a 7% utility users tax.
Correct.
Which would be an amount that would be greater than any surrounding community, which we could argue makes sense because we have no commercial business to supplement our revenue from use or from a use tax or sales tax. But I would find that really unpalatable to, and if we were, in my mind, the reason to look at this is that the utility users tax does tax consumption rather than just hit residents with a flat tax, which the parcel tax pretty much does. Yes, it's gradated based on parcel size, but it isn't a consumption-based tax anywhere close to as much as this utility users tax would be. I don't know that making that switch makes sense, given that people are used to the parcel tax and we'd have to basically educate people about a whole new tax. Granted, it's used by plenty of communities. I think there is an argument for it, but personally, I could not support going over 5%. I think that would.
Right.
And,
Go ahead.
and that's a great point, is if we choose as a supplemental revenue source, then probably 3 to 5% of the utility users tax. And, you know, we're talking about diversification of revenue. This is an additional revenue stream. If we're not using it to augment completely a different revenue stream, this is something that would provide us additional diversified revenue and based off of usage.
Right, to potentially fund some of the neglected maintenance projects, you know, or other, you know, capital improvement projects that the town needs to undertake.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
okay, that's
So-
pretty
Well,
clear.
just to push on that point a little further, I think that's a really important point, Elizabeth. So, if we're looking at adding an additional revenue stream, we have to think really carefully about that, obviously, because that's an additional tax on the residents. And we are, right now, are in a period of where we're experiencing surpluses. Now, granted, we have neglected a lot of infrastructure investment over the last 30-some years. And we can see, like with the drainage study and with the other studies that we're having done, that there's big price tags out there if we want to take these things on. I think that before we were going to take on any other tax, I'd really want to hear from the residents what their priorities are on these different infrastructure improvements. I know residents want certain of them, but I really want to hear what their priorities are. And we need to find a way to really air that out and you know, put price tags on the different things that we're contemplating doing, and then people can decide whether we want to supplement the parcel tax, replace the parcel tax, or how we want to manage it.
Well, I think that we have an opportunity to lay out our future plans better with the master plans coming out. We have the ability, I think the residents in this town have said it pretty loudly, we want to make sure you guys get something done, and that what we're thinking you guys are committed you're doing, making sure that we're doing those projects and not diverting that to some other project that they don't believe in or whatever the case is. So we've got to stay committed to what the projects we've outlined, and that when these residents do fill out this survey and they concur with our information and say, this is obviously the direction we believe you guys should be going in. We didn't have this opportunity in the past because the revenue sources weren't there. And as we've just heard, we're talking about $20 million to maintain our existing drainage issues, and that's just to maintain. It's not to accomplish anything more than that. So, you know, we have to be better planners, but we don't want to be overtaxing people, but we have to have the foresight that we gotta tackle some of our problems. So,
I
And I
think,
think that-
I think that, first off, in going to the public, we've got to recognize that in the last 2 years, 3 years, our revenues have increased about $2 million, or close to that. And so, and on top of that, we've got the parcel tax currently. So first off, you know, I think that there's some things in here that are good, and I'm a little concerned. A utility tax taxes everybody, okay? Everybody has to bear it, but people are more supportive of other people's money. And so the other aspects here was we're looking into that. I think we also need to weigh this other people's money things. That yes, indeed, if somebody's doing construction, if they're doing this or doing that, the same with our fees that we're doing in our master fee schedule, and as we address that on a year-to-year basis, and all the other fees that we're doing, that, you know, they're only impacting the special person who's doing something at that point in time. Over time, maybe everybody will have a permit on their house and they'll pay a permit. But I do think that really, it's very difficult treading to do a tax on everybody at this point in time, especially, you know, given where we are. If it's, I know that we're doing this to get ready for maybe what's gonna happen if the parcel tax doesn't, you know, we choose not to do it. But right now, we haven't chosen not to do it. It's on the books, it's been passed, and we got another 4 years. So it might be a little premature in other than studying it. It's a great study. But I think given the fact that the property values have gone up, given the fact that where we are with the extra parcel tax, I mean, we do have essentially $3 million plus or minus more than what we had before. And I agree that we have a lot of studies done, and we want to make sure that we're addressing each of those studies, but we also got to make sure, just like we did on the drainage, we just had that conversation. Several $1 million would be to fix the thing down at Los Lomitas, but shouldn't the school district, who just passed a bond measure, be paying for some of that, since they made the foolhardy approach of building in the floodplain, knowledge, in a knowledgeable thing? It's their obligation to protect the kids at this school. That's what they're charged with. So I do think that, you know, we have an aging, you know, in the past, the council has had to, you know, wring their hands and didn't have enough money to do a lot of things, and we do have some money, we got to do the right things, as the Vice Mayor said, let's get the proper priority. But, you know, at this point in time, you know, I'm not really like overjoyed about doing utility users tax, but I am more interested in the other things that we have in here, as well as some of the things that perhaps the charge of city rates.
So my comments are that we owe it to our residents to look at all options. And I'm very thankful that staff is taking the lead in doing this for us and, you know, showing us all kinds of options and comparing it to other jurisdictions and things like that. So we have a lot of deferred maintenance. It's nice that we have a little extra money in the bank. This is a rare situation. It hasn't always been this way. We also can't lose sight of the fact that we do have some unfunded liabilities yet to pay down, some that we have been really, I think, responsible in funding this last year and the year before to try to catch up, but it's still not done. And we've got a lot of hands being held out to us, you know, wanting some of this extra money. So the parcel tax did pass. We did talk to residents who supported it and told them that we would be very diligent in looking at other revenue sources to replace the parcel tax in the future, and that we need to start early, not that we're going to decide today to have a utility users tax. And all these big projects, I think it's really gonna be key for us to look at grant funding, shared costs with our other jurisdictions in doing some of this, regional big project cost analysis. So that's the utility users tax.
Yeah. And great point, that we have to understand the reasonableness of imposing, taxes or fees, and also timelines, and whether other requirements that are, required. And so utility users tax timeline requires a vote of the electorate. If it's a general tax, it's a majority. If it's a special tax, it's 2/3. Again, like George mentioned, it's going to require public education and repertory work requirement. Also, and I hear the talk about, we just passed the parcel tax for 4 years. Well, this would be something that we would have to, as soon as we can implement it, would be next year, looking into putting in the electorate. But at least, we have time. But this is, an option that, will take, at the timeline requires us, a year out, maybe 2 years out. We have 4 years to consider this.
Couldn't it be passed in 2016? It would have to be November 2015 in order for it to, because it was 2013 that it was passed.
The parcel tax?
2012?
That's
It's
the
2013.
parcel tax goes.
4 years from
Yeah.
this June.
4 years from this past
June.
This coming
From
up
this
June, this
June.
coming up June.
Yeah.
We did it a year in advance.
So
Right,
it's
we were ahead of the time.
2018, so
2018.
we had some
Yeah,
time.
we have plenty of time. I think
Okay.
Robert's point though is, if
It
we
takes
say we
time
want
to
it in
do
2
it.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't
start
just
it.
say,
I
let's
mean,
do it,
I
let's
think
do
that
it
November
November.
15.
No, that was
Or
the
November
earliest.
16th.
If you wanted to jump on it, the earliest would be the date, but we do definitely have time because it
Okay.
requires a vote.
But I think we can also do that, or at least think about doing a survey and having the utility user tax in that questioning. And percentage variations in there so that, I mean, obviously Menlo Park found out, and I would like to know, what you guys think, what was the big roar other than another tax?
Well, it was partially that for sure.
Yeah.
There'd also been some misuse of funds in the city, as I remember, and the high salaries and pensions were brought forward
Yeah.
Right.
at the same time, and I think people just said enough is enough. And if I could just make a comment on the parcel tax vis-à-vis other taxes, I think parcel tax was specifically tied to the police department, which is what really carried it over the goal. I think if you uncoupled it, you would have a very difficult time passing that tax.
For the CIP, for the construction, for the
Well, for
capital
the parcel
projects.
tax, if it wasn't tied to the police department.
Right.
And that's a good point,
Right.
and if we go in, or this is a discussion, if we go in this direction and we wean in maybe even at 1%, which is, and wean out, knowing that maybe in the future that nobody would support the potential utility, the use, then we got two things going, and we just don't want one to fail and us sitting here with nothing.
But with the
That's the
parcel
risk.
tax, we do have the right to change the allocation every year. We did a couple of years ago, because it had never been set. And so, Jim, when we were on the finance committee.
Yeah,
We did set it, and so we can do that now that we've got extra general fund money, we can actually allocate a lot more to capital improvements. So no one's saying, I'm not definitely saying, hey, let's cut back the capital improvement program. But we do have the money, that's my only point, we do have the money, et cetera, so.
I think politically, that would make a great statement from the council to the town, is we're not gonna use the full amount of parcel tax. And we are gonna use the surplus to fund capital projects in town. I just think from a political
Yeah,
standpoint.
that's something that we could gauge by, again, surveying the residents and seeing if it's even viable, if they're even remotely supportive of it. Because 2/3 is a big, hurdle.
Yeah.
If it's for special tax,
For
it's
special
2/3, but majority if it's just a general.
And we'll have 2 meetings coming up, both meetings in June. You'll have an opportunity to discuss the parcel tax before you actually impose it at the June 18th meeting.
Perfect, thank
So
you.
talk about that very thing.
Business license.
Yeah, moving on, business license tax is another option that we explored. It's a currently tax imposed on businesses that conduct business here in town. The town levies it at a current flat rate with a cap by category. We have 4 categories, and currently there's about 1,200 business licenses that are issued. So here's the kind of the last 3 years of our business licenses: 163,000, 183,000, and 11 goes to 170,000 in 12-13. These are the current categories, and based on the current fees, the flat fees that we've explained, the number of applicants, the total business license as of 13-14 is about 185,000. And you see there's 1,206 applicants currently. One of the things that we've discussed in research is if we kept the same business license model at the current categories, flat fee, and we raised it by $100, this would be the new revenue that could be generated, $305,000. So it results in an approximate increase of $120,000 in augmented revenue just by the change of $100.
But if we tied it to the amount of revenue, a percentage of the revenue that business was conducting in the town, then it would be substantially larger.
Yes, and that's kind of a catch, and you're right, it would be. And it's a kind of catch-22, and how to implement that, and making sure that businesses do report their gross receipts.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have less businesses applying for a business license because now it's changed? But that's something that we are looking into, and that's one of the other alternatives, is the town could change its taxation model to straight gross receipts.
One of these being, most of it being construction projects, and we know what the value of the construction permits are. We should be able to calculate what we think the 1% or something like that, any sort of percent, what that might be.
Yes.
I will tell you, wait a minute, you were not on council, and you, or if you do, you don't remember what happened when we had that kind of formula. And we had to go back and refund business license taxes because it had been a percentage of the valuation. And it was ruled at that time that it was an illegal collection of funds. And so I don't think that's something that we can do. I don't think we should even entertain.
Well, I think Councilmember Whitmer's talking about providing an estimate for what we could receive based on the valuation of a project, estimate what the contractor might have received in gross receipts to determine what the business license might be. I'm not sure, what we're talking about though is, you've come into town, you're a plumber, you're an electrician, you're making gross receipts. Your gross receipts for the type of work that you're doing in town is $1 million. Your business license is based on a percentage of those gross receipts, not a project valuation, but a percentage of the actual revenue you're receiving from the business you're conducting in town.
But he's saying to calculate that.
Or no, to
Based on-
estimate
Estimate.
for us. Because right now, we need more information to determine that. We have a business license form that says, put in your gross receipts, but nobody's filling
Yeah.
that in. They're all just going for the cap, so we don't know what the
Yeah.
data is. Yeah.
So how do other cities handle it?
They do the same. Cities, they range from a flat like us, and some also do based off of gross receipts. Hillsborough is one that does it off of gross receipts, and they tie it to an application fee, and then gross receipts. For us, what we're gonna do is, because it's on our business license, and it requires them to put in the gross receipts, but because businesses have been here so long, the way it is, it's tiered. It says, put in your gross receipts times a 0.05 tax rate, and what you pay whatever's the lowest. So the lowest based on that category obviously is gonna be $125, whether if they put $20,000 times 25%, so they're paying the lowest. But what we're working on, and it's gonna take a year, is we're working on getting our business application to require them to input their business license, gross receipts, their gross receipts as they apply for the business license. So we can kind of gauge that data, so for a year.
So as Vice Mayor just commented, if we make it $1,000, then we're looking at substantially.
Right.
Robert, when were these fees adjusted the last time?
Quite a long time.
Yes.
2010.
Because there was a situation in Redwood City,
No, it's an election.
there was a situation in Redwood City, and they sold this package to
It's
the
a tax.
electorate
It's always
based
gotta go
on
to
an
a vote, so it was a
inflation
long time
adjustment
ago.
from the last period. And I don't know what impact that would have, but that's how Redwood City sold an increase to the voters down there. That they had been adjusted for inflation in 10 years or whatever.
So when we have I apologize, when we have a construction site and we have a general contractor and we, let's say he builds a house, he charges the potential applicant $2 million, okay, the owner. And they sub out to 100 subs, and
They don't send that to
some do.
Doesn't
matter.
Even
Okay, 10.
10 subs.
20, 25.
Five subs.
Okay.
5 subs for the story.
You're making me hungry.
So the 5 subs,
The
5
footlongs.
subways.
I like the footlongs.
So 5 subways. We require that all the subs that are on site to have a business license.
Yes.
But the problem with taxing the job, this guy, the sub, is gonna write a bill for his job,
But we
right?
wouldn't tax the job. We're not taxing the job, we're taxing the
The
contract.
contract, right,
That's
so we're
what
not
we
going
had
out.
done, and we had to
Well,
refund.
Can I just
that.
push on what Dave
Please.
was bringing up, because I want to understand the categories. The,
Mhm.
the category 1 is a general contractor.
Yes.
Mhm.
Category 2 is a subcontractor.
A Class C subcontractor, yes.
Okay, so I'm not exactly sure what Class C means.
Class C is just their, it registered with the
license.
state, yeah, has a
Oh,
license. to be-
that's a licensed type, of- okay.
The plumber,
See,
electrician.
I'm one of the few people here who doesn't have a real estate background. Okay, and then, I know, and then category 3 and category 4 are both sole operators with no employees. Oh, I see, category 3 is Class C,
Mhm.
so I guess I don't understand exactly.
Well, sole operator, just no employee, just me.
And is category 4, I know it includes horseshoers, but does.
You like that?
They're
I-
called,
probably-
they're called furriers, they're
Oh,
called
well.
furriers, furriers.
But you didn't have dollars up there, is that because?
No, because that code
It's so
category.
few people, or it's not
none
used?
right now,
It's
none.
not, okay.
No horseshoes in town.
So, my opinion, looking at this and knowing the size of the projects that are happening in town, I think that it would not be unreasonable, I haven't looked at it in terms of the 5% multiplier issue, but I think it would not be unreasonable if category 1 was $1,000 and category 2 was $300, which is 2x, and category 3 was $200, which is 2x. That increases the general contractor's 4x, which is, you know, I mean, that, and
Yeah,
I
we
did the
keep that
analysis
model, we
based
do
on
that,
your
right.
numbers, Robert,
Mhm.
and it comes out to a $450,000 increase, if you use those numbers.
And you could do it as flat that way as well.
And you could do it flat. So, in my opinion, I think that what Bill proposes, the thing I'm concerned about that is I would want to make the system as administratively easy as
Exactly.
possible. So both contractors can understand it, and it's easy for the town to implement.
Right.
Well, we don't implement our business license program.
Oh,
It's done by Muni Services for us.
We
And
give them
that's relatively new, we
Relative,
jobbed it
right.
out back in 2010,
Right.
I see.
after
we
we
just take
had
a
the
cut.
big
So,
debacle.
is that right?
we
Yes.
pay $20 per business license
Yeah,
fee to
for
them.
them
Robert,
to
you
do
could
it.
do that.
We pay $20 per business license? No wonder we don't have category 4.
Scratch 4.
But yeah, we can propose
This,
it
Robert,
either
we
way, a
say
higher
that
flat,
much.
graduated, there's other ways to skin
About
the cat.
24,000.
Well, I think we want to make it equitable, we don't, I mean, but we recognize that those firms that are doing general contracting are doing very well in this town, and there's a lot of development going on.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do anything to chase them away, I think that our town is recognized as working closely with them and being a very good town to work with, and I want to maintain that. At the same time, we're challenged to figure out how to properly support the town and provide the services that we provide.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem unreasonable to me that a general contractor would pay $1,000 to do business in the town.
The other component to business licenses is they're more regulatory in nature. They're our ability to go out and see who's in town, who's on the streets, who's walking the streets, who's working in town. We don't want people to skip out on a business license and we don't know they're out there. You as a homeowner can call us and say, hey, there's a landscaper working next door, he doesn't have a license, you know, that sort of thing. We need to know that. So we want you to come in and get your business license. So the category 3 with the gardening and landscaping and janitorial, the smaller categories out there aren't making the big dollars doing the big projects. We want them to come in and get a license
Right,
nonetheless.
and
Yeah,
if you are,
that's right, yeah.
if you're a small town, you know, small operator, small town, but a small landscape operator, and you have 1 or 2 clients in Atherton, and then you've got, you know, 3 or 4 clients in Menlo Park, in Redwood City, East Side, and every city requires you to have a business license tax. I mean, it could run up into a lot of money, and these guys, you know, have to pay their insurance and helpers and.
That's not
yeah.
who would be targeted for the $1,000. I mean, I think we need to be reasonable, I completely agree, we don't wanna push people to where they're gonna try to skip out on the system.
I think we can get to 2 categories and what they find if they get caught without the license.
Yeah.
And a fine that makes it like, you know, you're the categories we're looking for, and if you're here working in town, we want to know you're here, and the fine's gonna cost you more than the license fee. Or,
The license fee plus a fine.
Well,
We learned that.
Operating
That's right.
without a business is a misdemeanor. Without a business license is a misdemeanor. It comes with a $1,000 fine, 6 months in jail. So we do have that at our disposal when we go out and enforce. But the bigger component to this is Robert's next slide, is the business license is a tax. It requires a vote in order to change.
I think
that's okay.
I don't think that's a
you can vote. Oh, yeah.
Especially if we get rid of 2 categories.
Right, no, and like George said, we would have to, there's a timeline, so that any amount of changes, either the amount to the business license or how we conduct the business license, the structure, is gonna require us to bring it to vote.
In your earlier study, you ruled this out as a source of revenue enhancement, and it still looks like it's relatively minor. Why is it back on the list?
We just put a couple $1,000s, $300,000 into it.
No, it was part of the council's narrowing list to investigate further what adjustments we could make, so that's why it's shown back.
Every little
I
bit's
agree
gonna help
with
us with these
Mr.
projects.
Polito that it is small potatoes as presented, you know, but to even go out to a vote to increase it as it is, but if you're gonna increase it, I don't know, to $500,000 in revenue, you know, that.
Well, here's a frame of reference. Here's a frame of reference to use. $120,000 of revenue is a cop on the street.
Additional.
Yeah, well, it's
It's a body, it's a full body,
well, we gotta spread it out because it's.
Well, not, that doesn't cover his benefits.
without benefits.
Yeah, we don't really have an outline.
Okay, let's not get into that.
I think if we have, if we would consider, I actually think 3 categories is better than 2, but if we would consider increasing category 1 4x and the other 2 categories 2x, my calculation shows that generates $457,000, so that's meaningful.
So that's only
that's-
100, but we're already generating 100.
No, that's up 457 additional
Additional,
dollars.
okay,
addition.
all right,
Yeah.
okay.
Glad you did
So
that.
that's
some
not-
channel work.
Congratulations.
So,
Forget that requires a vote, though.
oh, I understand.
That's,
I think that's,
to me, it's always a problem.
well, it's not gonna be, I mean, it requires
Utility tax.
education, but it strikes me that everybody knows how much construction is
No,
going on.
I don't disagree with that.
Everybody's impacted.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it at all, I just thought,
And I think it's an area that residents are willing to tax more, probably more easily than a utility user's
yeah,
tax.
oh, yeah.
Right, and it's people doing business in town, most likely, and it's not everybody in town is doing business, but, you know.
Right.
And they got a
That
couple
way-
guys like yourself who aren't paying.
And the people voting on it are the people in town.
That's right.
Not the people visiting town.
Yeah.
Jim, the people voting on it are people in town. So the people that, there are quite a few people that are coming from out of town to work in town because we've got the business.
Right.
It's a classic, it's an OPM, of course.
Yeah, so I say,
What did you say?
I say,
OPM.
So,
Other people's
Other
money.
Oh,
people's
yeah.
OPM.
so
I
this,
say we
just
knock
to
on that door.
clarify.
It's like
this
a
vote,
motel
if it's
tax.
a general tax, would this be considered general or special tax?
We could implement this general
It's a
tax, it's
general.
currently general.
Yeah. General, so it'd be a majority.
And I think that's something we
Yeah,
can,
definitely tackle.
and every little bit helps
Right.
as
Yeah.
we move on to
As-
rent and
as
use
long
We
as
can
fees.
get the rent there.
Robert, as we move on to rent and use fees?
Rent, yeah, we got the rent at the Atherton Hotel. They're still running that.
Really?
Yeah, Robert,
Right.
Go ahead and start talking.
Okay,
They have the presentation.
you're right.
we're ready.
Okay, the rent and use fees, that's another one that we looked at. And what's common revenue source in most communities is permitting the use of their facilities. Revenue can be derived either through a rental, use of the property, and one of the cool things about this, it's not a tax. So voter approval is not required. So it just requires a public hearing, adoption of resolution, council sets the rates. Right now, of all our facilities, that we can use is Holbrook Palmer Park. Currently, we have Knox Place Pool, we have the fields and outdoor classes, we also have the pavilion, we have the carriage house, we have the main house, and those are ideas and uses.
Will the library, when we do the new library, I mean, some people have dinners at libraries. Will the new library be, we get the funds if somebody rented that for a dinner or something like that at night?
Well, if, one way it's proposed is to use the town chambers as its community room instead of putting the multi-use facility within the library. If it's this facility, yeah, the money could be clearly ours.
If somebody wanted to get married, or some people like to get married at City
Yeah.
Hall and, meet your
Correct.
area.
Yeah.
And then the mayor can do the,
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
And he gets a fee as well. He gets a
Absolutely.
fee.
But if it's a facility within the library that the library rents out of its own, I would assume that that would have to go back to the library revenue.
So we would want to make sure to be the,
Yes.
yeah.
We would like to be.
We'd like to have an event.
So our major facility is the park right now that we could use. So we thought of potential opportunities for use of the park. Now, some of those would be season camps, sport camps at the park, fitness camps, those, what is it?
Boot camps.
Boot camps, exactly. That was in the report. Boot camps, sports camps, half-day, weekly, monthly sessions. So we figured, they could be charged at non-residential and residential fees. We get they use our fields or our room, our facility, our properties, meaning the carriage house, main house, whatever. And so it would create $26,000, $12,000 worth of revenue. Now, one of the things we thought about was getting into vendor agreements, would be to create, whether it's a share the revenue, split it, or come up with some other rearrangements. But we felt that would be another use of using our facility and charging at least a fee.
Yeah, we could also though raise, I mentioned this to George yesterday, we get next to nothing for having the sports teams use the field today. AYSO charges a ton of money for having per child, and they've got a giant coffer. It's the same thing with MALL, although they're building a facility. But they charge, hundreds of dollars for a kid to play, and they pay us $10. And all of the referees, the coaches, the umpires, they're free. They're all volunteers. So what do they buy? They buy the shirts they give the kids, and they get to keep them, and they buy some balls, 7 balls per team. That's it. And so they're making a ton of money, and we're charging them next to nothing to use the field. We should raise that. We should find out also about some of these little camps that they're running, as you pointed out already. Menlo Park is running kids soccer camps and baseball camps all year round. We don't want to compete with them, but it'd be good if we could maybe get an agreement. We do a certain age group, they do a certain age group, and then we can also, with the RFP, maybe expand our tennis camps.
Right.
So
Yeah, I kind of, I'm on a finance committee, the last finance committee, I supported, I brought it again, it was in the almanac again, Menlo Park charges a 35% non-resident use fee. And they make $400,000 off of that fee. We need to look at that, exactly what you're saying. These kids are playing for free over here, and they got $400,000.
Yeah,
$400,000.
yeah.
You all
They have a
know-
rec program. They have a comprehensive rec program.
Well,
We don't have a
this
rec
car,
program.
the swimming club and
Yeah,
everything.
it's-
It's a much bigger.
We do charge a fee for non-resident use of the park now, it's part of the structure. So my question on this is, I see your recommendation, which is to hold up and let's see what happens over the year with Dana Catering. I think that is a good and wise recommendation. But I feel very strongly that if, and I'm not opposed to charging fees for sports. I'd like to know, does Menlo Park or Redwood City, what does AYSO and these other teams pay for use of other fields? I think we could find that out. I do think that any revenue that we're generating from the park, which I agree with you, it's not the only because of the telecommunication sites, but it's the principal resource. I think any revenue we generate out of the park should stay in the park. Now, certainly that could offset what we would otherwise be providing in the park, but we all know, as part of our discussion with the master plan for the park, is that we've underfunded this park for a long time, and there's a lot of needs there. And I'm not really interested in scraping every dollar out of the fees in the park, but I'm happy to get what's market. I think it's the right thing to do. We should just keep it in the park. We shouldn't think we're gonna use that to supplement our general expenses.
That's what we said we would do, use it for park maintenance.
So
Well,
I think this is really, good brainstorming about this. I would like to see how the park master plan unfolds and the uses that are going to be identified in the park, and have that be a more robust conversation. But I think that this is really headed in the right direction.
step one.
Okay.
Well, I don't disagree with what you just said, but I do think as we're looking at these use agreements from the organized teams, we should do the analysis at that time because we renew them annually.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah,
We should do that.
obviously, we should compare to see what
And
everybody
they're
else
gonna
is.
come up in June again?